The Effects of Industrial Caused Global Warming by Jacob Hooper, Kevin Medina, Andrew Eisenhut, Jackson Carricker, and Will Richards. So, the historical background of industrial caused global warming. In a statistic by Fahd Ahmed, PhD in finance at Greenwich University, states, greenhouse gas concentrations are significantly higher than they were at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, meaning atmospheric CO2 concentrations have reached 409.8 parts per million in 2010, meaning higher than at any point in history at least the past 800,000 years. In addition, in a graph by Mohammed Kabir, a postdoctoral researcher in bioinformatics at Dal University Qatar, shows the industry contributes to 29% of all direct and indirect emissions. In a quote by Mohammed Kabir, he states, "It is observed that buildings, industries, transportation are three main anthropogenic activities which are mainly responsible for indirect and direct emission of greenhouse gases, particularly CO2. So the increase of surface temperature on the Earth coincides with the Industrial Revolution and the rise of industry in a graph by Guy Stewart Callender, a professor of physics at the Imperial College of London. All in all, this shows that the main problem is the high percentage of direct and indirect emissions from industries and their processes, which increase CO2 concentrations in the atmosphere.
The first solution for industrial-caused global warming is to have more efficient energy uses within industries. According to the United Nations article titled Actions for a Healthy Planet, the best ways we could do this would be to reduce, reuse, recycle, change transportation methods of goods, and use less plastics in the production of these goods. Reduce, reuse, and recycling is effective because it reduces waste and promotes a healthier style of living. According to the Maine Department of Environmental Protection, wasted resources cost time, money, energy, and materials. If industries were to reuse more of their materials, it would limit the amount of waste they produce that goes out into the environment. The second way the UN suggests is to change transportation methods. According to the Center for Climate and Energy Solutions, this would include changing to more carbon-friendly and electric vehicles, and also filling up trucks all the way before they get shipped out. This could apply to planes as well, as we could have more cargo-centered airports to improve efficiency, and also even use more boat transportation up and down rivers or across oceans. The final way is to use less plastics when industries produce consumer goods. According to the Hennepin County Climate Action, 4 to 8% of the world's oil is used to produce plastics. If we reduce the amount of plastics we use, we will also reduce our oil consumption and therefore our carbon emissions. Some more environmentally friendly materials we could use would be glass, wood, stainless steel, or cardboard. These are easier on the environment and easier to recycle. Some limitations for these would be not everything can be recycled or used more than once. Many industries are still using these plastics and have already wasted a bunch of plastics that has been dumped into the ocean and many other places. It would be difficult to find a way to take out these plastics that have already been wasted and find a place where we can put them without it affecting the environment. Second, transporting goods and people both between and within countries and across long distances could be difficult without using a vehicle or lots of gas. Finally, according to the NPR, using less plastic would significantly reduce our oil demand. However, plastics are both lightweight and more cost-effective than other, more environmentally friendly materials. So switching to these materials would be a bit more expensive. Finally, the oil industries that produce these plastics would be negatively impacted by it, so they would have a push to produce more plastics.
The second solution is alternative energy sources. Unlike industrial energy, alternative energy is naturally replenished, meaning it comes back over the natural cycle of the Earth. Since it is natural, it also has less effect on the atmosphere when compared to industrial sources such as coal and oil. As shown in this graph by the EIA, the 12% America uses for renewable energy comes in many different sources, such as wind, hydro, and solar power, which means it has a diverse energy profile. Those sources of energy come from many different parts of America and can be used for effective energy production. More benefits of this from the National Geographic is job creation. People would be required to manufacture, maintain, and build these massive turbines and plants for energy. Another benefit is energy independence. According to Yale, America imports and exports millions of tons of oil and other gases for power and into the country. Another benefit is carbon dioxide reductions. Also, according to Yale, millions of Americans each year suffer from valley fever and lung cancer from carbon dioxide pumped out by industrial companies. Some limitations is that it's expensive. According to Yale, it would cost America approximately $4.5 trillion in order to implement renewable sources throughout. It is also not as popular. Industrial energy is the most popular form of obtaining energy in America. Also, it is limited availability. Not everywhere has renewable sources. We would have to, in order to be efficient, we would have to put solar panels where it's most sunny and wind turbines where it's most windy. In this graph by the German Development Agency, we can see that 76% of what would have been created by industrial processes that were avoided through the use of renewable energies. This shows an uptrend in renewable energies and that we can have a future of renewable sources and still use energy efficiently.
So our third solution, the carbon tax, according to the Center for Climate and Energy Solutions, is when governments set a price that emitters must pay for each ton of greenhouse gases they produce. This would prevent global warming since it discourages emitters from using greenhouse gases and encourage renewables so that they avoid the tax. Similarly, emission trading systems, according to Hannah Ritchie, PhD in geosciences, and Paulo Rosada, PhD in data analysis, is when governments require companies to buy licenses that allow them to emit a certain amount of greenhouse gases. The prices of the licenses are determined on a trading system that fluctuates over time. However, it mostly increases. This also discourages greenhouse gas emissions and encourages the switch to renewables. However, both solutions act as deterrents and don't reduce pollution directly. And as you can see in this graph created by Hannah Ritchie, PhD in geoscience, and Paulo Rosada, PhD in data analysis, shows the carbon taxation prices around the world, with Sweden having the highest, which is about $55, and Poland having the lowest, which is less than 10 cents. And in this graph, it shows the carbon price via emission trading systems around the world, with Bulgaria having the highest, which is about $37, and the US having the lowest, which is about $1.44. As you can see, most of these countries are concentrated within Europe. However, some limitations of the carbon tax is that it might not be, according to Metota P. Omnier, an environmental health and safety specialist with over 4 years of experience, is that the carbon tax will not be politically feasible or receive much support, especially in countries or industries that rely heavily on petroleum and coal, and that it might have and that since the carbon tax is a flat price, it might disproportionately impact lower income communities since their energy bill will be higher. But some implications of the carbon tax is that it would boost economic development and accelerate technological development for green technologies such as renewables, and that countries, industries, especially manufacturing, will likely try to leave countries in order to get around the tax, since if they didn't, they would lose out on cheap power and would be forced to increase costs.
So the best solution we found is using alternative energy sources, because instead of having to limit or tax energy consumption, it focuses on not affecting the environment as much in general by using these different sources. Now, some issues when it comes to more efficient carbon use is that it only lessens and does not eliminate the problem at hand. And also, when it comes to carbon taxes, this yet again also only tries to limit the carbon use and might not be as effective depending on the different political climates of the world. So, to further accentuate these issues, according to the German Environmental Agency, currently fossil fuels such as coal, petroleum, and natural gas are primary energy sources internationally, but Burning fossil fuels releases greenhouse gases, which are the driving force behind climate change. To conclude, this is still the best solution because using alternative energy sources, the flaws of this outweigh the flaws of the other sources. But there are still flaws. So the major flaw when it comes to this one is feasibility. It might not be very feasible to completely switch over our energy source because we are, as said earlier, very reliant on these using carbon emissions. But the flaws for using alternative energy sources outweigh the other flaws by a lot. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to start with you, Andrew. Andrew, how did the group decide to include William's perspective or conclusions into your presentation?
We used Will's ethical perspective or lens by kind of thinking, is it ethical to do these? Like, what is the overall effect more on the environment and the people? Because some of these might like be good in theory, but then a lot of people become homeless because of it, and it might affect governments heavily.
Okay, and let's see. Can you reflect on your colleagues' work and tell me which one had the greatest impact on your overall understanding of the problem that your group identified?
So, I believe that Kevin's work, because he focused on an economic lens, I believe his work had the greatest effect on our presentation because he provided many solutions to the problem of global warming, like a carbon tax system, and he also brought up how this might potentially affect, disproportionately affect wealthier regions compared to poorer regions with the carbon tax.
Okay, thank you, Jacob. William, what is a way in which your team's resolution makes you think differently about your own research?
So our final conclusion was that Jackson's alternative energy solutions was better. It was the best solution. And this changed my research because I focused more on the ethical lens and how it will impact, as Jacob said, the poorer communities, and how building these big solar or wind farms could impact the people around it.
Okay, thank you. And Jackson, can you give one way your thinking changed as a result of learning about Kevin's findings?
So Kevin's lens was economical, and Kevin talked about oil companies and how they would lose money if the industrial process was stopped by the our conclusion of renewable sources. So that changed my thinking about how the industrial companies would react to us changing our source.
Okay, thank you. And Kevin, if you had another team member, I don't know if this applies really because you had 5. Would there be another perspective that they could have researched that you were lacking that would have been a useful contribution to the project?
So if we did have another team member, we would likely look through the social/cultural lens and see how current society thinks about fossil fuels, renewable energies, and other such technologies, or making things more efficient. And we could possibly see how the public would react and how they would support these kinds of bills, legislations, or energy sources.
Okay, thank you.